Clear.
Okay, very good. All right. Hi, everybody. This is Keith. I'm the CEO of SmartBuild, as most of you probably know. And so today, for this webinar, Sean McFeely is going to present the enhancements in our next release of software 1.96. And just so everybody's aware about just our format here and the rules of the road, we schedule this for about a 1 hour webinar. And the format is that Sean will go through a formal presentation of the changes in 1.96. That usually takes only 30 to 40 minutes as he walks through that. And then what we'd like to do, and actually we enjoy it immensely, is to open up for open question and answer after that. And typically, quite often, we'll go past the 1 hour scheduled time allotment, and that's fine, and we'll just let it go as long as people want. And that during that open session, as I said, question and answer, but suggestions are welcome. So anyway, so just so you know, that's what the format's going to be today. So also, while Sean is doing the presentation, we'll have everybody muted. If we didn't do that, it would be quite a Tower of Babel and not very manageable. But if you have questions, we want you to ask questions. The way to do that is to use the chat box. So if you look in the upper right-hand corner, you see the chat box there. So as Sean is walking through, if you have a comment, that's welcome. They'll be made, of course, on the right-hand side of the screen, everybody's screen. But if you have questions, go ahead and ask them there. And one of our people, one of the SmartBuild folks, will field those questions and text them to Sean, so that he can reply even while everybody is yeah. Question? I'm sorry, I thought somebody had a question. Anyway, so that is going to be the format as we go through the webinar today. So anyway, I think I'll just kind of leave it at that. Sean, if you want to hop in, I'll give the mic to you and you can do your thing, okay?
Okay, thank you. All right, I'll share my screen here. And first thing that I will say, fairly typical these days, I'm on the beta site right now, so this is not released. We did not release last night as we originally had planned. In our testing, we found some things that we want to clean up and take care of. So we are still working on this to make sure that it's going to be the best quality that we can put out at this time. So we will release soon, though, hopefully Monday evening, potentially Tuesday evening. So this is the beta site that we're looking at. This is not going to be available until early next week, but we'll keep you updated on that. And you do have time to check out the beta site if you're interested in that. You can go to the same website that you have. You can type in beta. You can log in the same way. It's not a bad idea just to go through a few typical kind of jobs and just make sure everything is looking good. You don't have to spend a lot of time, but it would help us if you do that and see if anything unusual jumps out at you. And if anything comes up, let us know. So you got a little bit of time. And also you can kind of play with some of these things. You can get your settings set up and see what happens in a beta site that doesn't affect your production or live site at all. So you can help us test, and you can also get used to the features and see how some of these things operate. If you want to do that, if you have more questions, just let us know. We can walk you through that. We can do even a session kind of like this and walk you through getting onto the beta site. Okay, so now we'll look at some of the new stuff in this particular release. I think the first thing that we'll look at is related to the cantilever porches, which we've continued to work on and make improvements over time, and we will continue to do this. We still have some work to do on these, but we did make a pretty significant improvement here, I think, in this release. And as you can see, I've input a cantilever porch here. And the way that we have done this up until this version is you get a full height cantilever porch. It's going to go all the way up. So the main thing that we've done here, I'm going to hit edit. I'll click down here and open up the input. So this is going to be the edit, but this is also going to be true if you hit Camp Porch and you're just inputting this Camp Porch. The new option here is that it's going to default to the full height like it has in the past. But if you uncheck this, it's going to open up this height field. And basically you can just set the height of this cantilever porch as opposed to just going all the way up like this. If I change this to 8 foot and hit apply, it will make the top of this at 8 foot. So now you can get this kind of look, which is more typical, I would think. And so this is a request that's come in several times. So it looks much better. You can get these to be more presentable for one thing. We have some work to do, and any feedback you guys have on this would be helpful with how these do end up getting framed. The one thing that we haven't done here, I mean, one of the big things is getting the ceilings in here. So there is no ceiling setting for specifically for the cantilever porches. And if we turn off the shell here and look at the framing, there's probably some changes and some things that we could do to improve this framing. So anything that you want to see differently here, let us know on the framing, as well as some of these trims. I did notice this is a base trim right now. I'm guessing that may not be the right thing we want to do at this point, but that jumped out at me as I was looking at this today. So things like the trim and any of the framing, let us know on that. This is mostly going to be a nice visual and some of the panel lengths and things. You can jump into the 2D mode. You can use lofts to get a ceiling on here. So I'll just add one of these in here real quick. I'll leave it at this 8 foot height. And a lot of this, I'll just kind of leave the ceiling material, but I am going to turn on has ceiling. So this is going to put a ceiling on the bottom of that loft. And ceiling material, we could do some different things. I'll leave this in here, but you can throw a loft at the top of this. So I will put that in here. It added this, as you can see. And the 8 foot is going to be here at the bottom. This height here is going to be with the actual framing and flooring in there. But if we return and save those changes, you can get a ceiling in there using the lofts. We want to, in the future, include some ceiling framing specifically with the cantilever porches. And so we will do that, but we can put in something up there. And you can get some framing from that as well. So I think that is pretty much it on this for now. We want to continue to work, please to provide feedback on these, but definitely a much better looking cantilever porch, I'd say. And if we can go into this more once we get to the end of this. If we have questions, if we want to look at framing in detail and some of the trim, we can do that at the end here.
Can you send him a voicemail?
I don't think that was for me, but if somebody has a question, yeah, let us know. Couple quick things here. These are some changes that we've made to the porches, and it's a handful of people who do porches in some certain ways, but I just want to point them out here at the webinar real quick. Not going to spend a ton of time here. One of the things that we've done is this here is an end rafter. So you can set up a separate material for the end rafters. So I have these rafters, and you can see that this material here is, I think it's a 2x8, and these might just be 2x4s. So you can set an end rafter on these porches that's a different material, and you can also drop these end rafters. As you can see, this is dropped down below the purlins, whereas our typical rafters, or our rafters here, are not dropped below the purlins in this case. So we have these flush purlins, and then we have this dropped end rafter with the flush purlins. That's not new. We have actually done that before. What is new is that before we were just running this long, like it was kind of part of this overhang. Now we're going to hold this back. It's always going to stop here. So we had some requests for people who wanted to do that. It's going to clean this up and look better. And that's just the way it's going to operate in this type of situation. If that's not what you want to see, please let us know. We've had feedback that this is what we want to see in this case. So that's just going to happen automatically. If you drop these with the flush purlins, it's going to stop that short. So that's just an update that we did. Another one that I don't have actually demonstrated here, but if you do this kind of framing, you know, for outrigger framing, if you're using outriggers on the porch, we've just extended that outrigger up to the second purlin. It's always going to go up to the second purlin. Before, we could stop it at the first purlin, and you get into some situations where your outrigger wouldn't extend very far. It wasn't kind of feeding the bulldog, you could say, in terms of the structural support here. So we've had requests that we just always want to take these outriggers up to the second purlin. So there's going to be some additional length on these purlins, and that's just the way it's going to be right now. It's going to go up to the second purlin. Again, it's one of those things, if we need to make additional tweaks or changes to those, let us know, but you should be seeing, if you're using these outriggers, that they'll extend up to the second purlin. A related change that not on the porches, I think that's everything for the porches right now. And this again is kind of a subset of customers, but just so people are aware, and especially if you do use this top of wall material for the height, we made one potentially significant change here if you do this. I believe most of the customers who use this are not going to be affected, but there might be some of you who are, and we did have some requests specifically of people who do it this way. But with the top of wall material as opposed to the ceiling height, no matter what you do to this building, in terms of like the roof pitches or the types of overhangs, you can see I have some sloped overhangs being used here, or even heel height changes. It is going to keep your sidewall, eave wall panels matching what you put in the exterior metal height. There's a couple, you can do some things to change that, but if you don't do anything with margins or other things, it's going to match. Your sidewall heights are going to match your exterior metal height when you're using top of wall, as opposed to the ceiling height where that'll just change your ceiling and everything else will kind of follow that. But in this case, kind of master here is the exterior metal height. So some people just use that setting, and that's how they get their metal heights. The thing that we have changed here is, if we go into the details, underneath the wall sheathing, we have the sheathing offset from grade. This allows you to just take length off the bottom of these panels from grade. You can input whatever you want here. And before, if you're using this exterior metal height as your master, then it would actually adjust the sheathing based on this offset. So if you put in, I'm just going to put in 1 foot here for demonstration. If you put in 1 foot, it would shorten your panels by 1 foot. Now this sheathing offset from grade is going to kind of keep the master as the exterior metal height. So it's going to adjust this entire building based on that 1 foot to keep these panels consistent on the sidewall. So if I do make that 1 foot change, it moves up the entire building 1 foot, but you do have a 1 foot offset from grade here. And that's pretty exaggerated. You're probably putting in 4 inches or something, or maybe taking it to the top of the slab. But important thing to keep in mind, if you do have this offset from grade, it's going to adjust your panels now. So something to just really, if you do use that, go take a look at that and just adjust that if you need to. We've had a few requests from people that this is how they wanted to operate in this case. So that is how it operates now. It's going to keep those panel lengths based on that setting. If you use ceiling height, this does not affect you. Nothing is going to change. This is only when you're using the top of wall materials for your height of your building. Okay. I think the next thing that I'll show here is we made some changes when you log a job. And so if you move this job from new, and I'm going to hit the make quote button up here, and some people use this and some people don't, but I'll go through it here for those of you that do, or if this was something that was bothering you about it and you don't use this feature because of it. When we make this a quote, it's going to lock this job down. So the idea is that you've gone through with the customer, everything looks good. You want to lock down this price. You want to lock down this job. You don't want to make any changes at this point. And so you can hit the make quote button. It's going to make me save these changes first. And then you have this job that is kind of set in stone, and it's going to give you some information here about this. When you lock this, the pricing for the job is going to be locked, all the framing, everything really should be locked, and you shouldn't be able to make any changes. You can move this to the next status, which is prep for order, where you can change some of the quantities and make some changes. You can also re-quote a job, so you could keep a quote, but then you could re-quote it. You can also do a save as, and you can copy jobs. So you can get back to this job and make changes, but the idea is in this particular status, once it's quoted, this is just locked. And even if you make changes to your pricing, nothing is going to change this job. The thing that could be confusing is once this was locked down, previously there were some things you could go in and you could edit things and make some changes, but they wouldn't really change anything. And so it's just a little bit confusing. So we've cleaned this up to where when you get into this quoted job, in this case where it's locked down, there's only certain things that you can do. For one thing, these are all going to be grayed out. You can't actually make any changes in here. We got rid of a bunch of stuff, as you can see here. A lot of the inputs are just not here anymore because they don't do anything and they really shouldn't be there, and it kind of could be confusing and confuse some people. We do have a few buttons here that allow you to view what you actually have in here. So if you hit the view 3D, I could click on this porch that we looked at before, and we can go in and see what we actually had as the settings. But we can't actually change anything here. You can't say okay. You can just hit close. And the dormers, if you have dormers on the building, this button allows you just access the dormers and see the properties. But again, you're not going to be able to save anything. If you do go to the view 3D, same kind of thing here. You can get into these. You can see the locations. You can see what the doors are. If you have lofts, we have this one loft in here. We can see what we put for the properties of this loft, but we can't change anything. We can close things. You can't edit any of these dimensions. So it's just really locked down. You shouldn't be able to save anything. There's no refresh down here. So basically, if you see this state, that means this job is locked. And so there's a few different statuses that can be locked, and they're going to just make sure that there's nothing confusing or nothing that you can do in order to think that you've changed that job or accidentally changed that job or something like that. So we had requests for people who've been using this to clean this up to make it less confusing. So that's what we've done here. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it for this. You can reprice these jobs, by the way. So even when it's locked down and quoted, if you've changed your pricing in the background, if you updated the pricing of 2x4s or whatever in your database, you can come into quoted jobs. And one thing you could do, and I haven't changed anything, so I get the exact same price. You could come in and say, yeah, I want to use the latest pricing, even though this is all locked down. Just update this job with the new pricing I have in my database. So you can do that if you want to still. And you do have all the visibilities and things down here as well that you can use. So I think enough said on that. Let's see here. Yeah, I guess the one other thing that don't necessarily need to be in the job, there's a couple things here. One in the settings, and one is what we're calling these merge fields. And so I'll go into the outputs on this, and this is related to our document templates. Probably most of you are familiar with these, but with the document templates, you can create a template in Word and format it any way you want, but then you can also put in what we call these tokens. And so I'm just going to download all these tokens at the moment. We'll kind of just run through this, I guess. But for any given job, we have all these tokens. And so you can create a Word document and you can put these tokens and these types of images embedded into the document, get it formatted and set up for your quote. You can have your branding and any text that you want in there that can be kind of boilerplate text, but then you can also put in these tokens that will fill in the blanks with job-specific information. So you can save this template.
Oh, Sean, you're not showing that document.
Thank you.
There we go.
There we go. So as I was saying, you can create your own template for your quote, and you can use all of these tokens to customize and design your quote for the things that you want to show to your customers. So if rafter spacing is important for you, you can use rafter spacing. So you can put these wherever you want. You can integrate them with the rest of your document, and it just kind of fills in these blanks to get a job-specific quote very easily. One of the weaknesses that we ran into with this is, let's see, I'm going to search here for wainscot. So this good example here, wainscot color. So you could put wainscot color in your quote and it would fill in that color. Now the problem is just the way that this was set up is even if you didn't have wainscot in this particular job, if you had the wainscot color, it is going to put in whatever your default wainscot color was. So you could end up with a quote that even though it doesn't have wainscot, it's going to show the customer the color of the wainscot, and it doesn't really make sense, or you have to go in there and kind of edit that and just get rid of it and know that, okay, this job doesn't have wainscot, I'm going to delete this out of here. Well, what these new merge fields allow you to do is kind of if statements where if there is wainscot, then show the wainscot color. And but you can also say now, if there is no wainscot, if it's not in the job, then show something else potentially. You could put in text there, wainscot not in this job or something, whatever you want to put in there. And I believe you can also just put in a blank so it just doesn't show anything. So these new merge fields, they just allow you to decide what gets put into these tokens if this doesn't exist in the job. A little bit more flexibility there, an extra tool. It gets a little bit complicated. I'm not going to go into the way that you set these up exactly here. It's not complicated. It's just like the computers need it to be a very specific way. So there's a certain formula you have to follow to make this work. And it's not hard. You just have to know what it is. We do have a separate document that explains all this. And I think we might potentially do a separate webinar that Royden might do. But you can also just call up and we can walk you through this. And we do have a document that we're going to share with people. The one thing I believe, and somebody please correct me if I'm wrong on this, this is not going to work natively with Google Docs, which I use here. In actual Word, this is kind of built into Word. With Google Docs, I don't think this is native. It's not built into the Google Docs, but I do believe you can get some kind of like plugins for Google Docs that would make this work. That is something that I didn't quite get to the bottom of, and I think we might have to. If that's something that you want to do or need to do, let us know. We might have to create a separate document or kind of have a different help document for people who use Google Docs. But I think that is pretty much going to do it here. Basically allows you to define what they're going to see if wainscot doesn't exist in this particular job, instead of just reporting all these things that may not even be relevant for that particular job. So that'll give more flexibility. Okay, I'm going to, let's see, it's going to make me go back here and share this different screen. I'm going to go back and share this screen. Okay, so so those kind of things would be embedded into the actual document templates. And so you'd have to create a new document template and then re-upload it to take advantage of those things. And that's where we'll have a document and some separate help for that. The last thing that I don't think I'm going to go too deeply into, just because, again, it's kind of, it gets a little bit complicated. And I'm guessing, I don't know what percentage of people here in this webinar actually would use this, but I think it's probably a smaller percentage, and I don't necessarily want to take up everybody's time here. But this, again, is another thing we can go into more deeply if you have questions about this. But this has to do with administering the supplier to builder relationship, where we have a supplier who has all the materials and they have a database and they have SmartBuild, and then underneath, and we call them children of like the parent, you can have builders, and a lot of you understand how this works, but there's been some difficulty with a supplier updating the children who have their own sites and they have their own settings to some degree and their own framing rules and the way that they do things, but they're connected with the supplier who can update the pricing and update some of the materials. And there's been some challenges just around updating those and making sure that it's clear who's getting updated and who's not, because some of the children, they want to be able to have their own control. They don't want to get all the changes, and some people just want to allow the supplier to pretty much define what they do. They don't have to worry about it, and they're good with that. So we have kind of these two different types of children, I guess. And the way that it was done could be confusing and it could cause some problems, and it did cause some confusion. And so we've cleaned that up to where there is a new setting. And I'll just go over this real quick. We will have a separate session on this, and you can let us know and we can do a session with you specifically. But as part of the distributor settings, you can set someone what we're calling is child controlled. And that just means the child pretty much they can still be a child, but they're controlling pretty much everything that they do. And so when the suppliers are making changes, it allows some builder child to basically be immune from all the changes that the suppliers are making. And so there's some specific settings here. If you use this and you're an administrator, some of these things would make more sense in terms of how your children are going to get updated. I think I'm probably just going to leave it at this for right now, because to get into all these things it's kind of a lot. And if you don't use them, it's not going to make a lot of sense. But it should be much better. It should be much clearer what is going on and what is being updated. Yeah, I think I'm just going to leave it at that, because just to get into this probably is too much. I think I'd rather leave more time here at the end and we can open it up. And we will have some separate sessions, and you can call in. If you're an administrator working with builders, let us know. We can help you and walk you through this a little bit more. I think it's just going to be too much this particular type of session. So that is everything that I wanted to put in here. We are doing things in the background as well with just being more efficient with how we're saving jobs and working on things in the background to make it easier to maintain and to fix bugs and to make changes more easily, and just updating things in the background for a few different purposes. So there are things that are happening in the background that you don't see. Just want to let you know those are happening. We did fix a pretty good chunk of bugs and things that come in as well. That's an important aspect of what we do. Don't really go through all those, but if you do have questions on those, they were listed out on the original notes that we sent out. But keep any bugs that you have, keep those coming in, and we will work on those, continue to get those fixed. And I think that is pretty much everything that I have for this session. So at this point, I'll open it up to anyone at SmartBuild. Anyone who wants to go into something more deeply you think is important, we can do that. Or anybody else, as we open it up for any questions that anybody has. Anything come in on the chat?
Yeah, there was a question early on as far as the document template stuff. When will that be available? Also, who do we contact for support setting those up? So I think you covered that.
Yep. So this, we still have to release this. It should be Monday, Tuesday. We'll let you know.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can contact our support. And we will have a document session if we have enough people.
Yep. Some questions about cantilever porches. Will the porch eventually put a ceiling in when adjusting the height? And I think you touched on that as well. So yeah, we're going to be working on some enhancements to that. Benjamin had a couple of specific questions. I think, Benjamin, the best bet would be if you have a job, an example of, hey, when I do this, it gives me 6. It should have given me 12, or vice versa, or whatever it is. Send that into support. In fact, you can just open up the job and click the support button and just say, hey, this gave me 16. I think it should have gave me 48. And then we'll have the job that we can use to reference, and we'll be able to really look at what's going on with that and get it captured as one of those bugs that Sean just mentioned that we try and get fixed with every release. So.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Royden mentioned there's going to be 2 YouTube videos on these 2 larger topics: the working with easier working with builders, child builders, and the one about the document template, the document dimensionals,
merge fields, and yeah. Awesome. Okay.
Yep.
Yep.
The question is, stairs going to be an option in the future? The answer to that is, of course, yes.
Yeah.
Will any of us be alive when that happens is an open question. I cannot tell you where stairs are going to be. But
I mean, they're pretty high up on the list, right? We've had a lot of people. We want to do those.
Yes.
They're not an easy one to tackle, though.
Well, and it's stairs are an option right now. You can type stairs in as a line item in your bid. So what is it that you mean when you think stairs as an option? What needs to happen within SmartBuild that is going to allow us to tell you, okay, we do stairs now, because it is a big issue. There's a lot of, as I think you guys know, when you put in stairs, it's like, it's not just like, here's a window. A window is pretty straightforward. When you even putting in a loft is pretty straightforward too. Here's a rectangle. How high is it off the ground? What pieces is it made of? When you talk about stairs,
Yeah, it's kind of a design tool.
Yeah, and then there's
Yeah.
So there's the stairs, there's the risers and the stringers and the treads. There's the balusters. There's the landings. There's stairs that turn. There's curved stairs, and I'm sure somewhere between those is a minimum necessary. Yes, we do stairs now, and what that is different to different people. So if you have some some examples, some pictures, whatever, if you could send that into support and said, hey, when will we be able to do this? That's going to help to drive what we work on when we do actually work on stairs. And this kind of goes to Jason Roeder's question. He says, do you have a list of current things you are working on so we don't work too hard on workarounds? And this is a good point. I mean, if we're going to be doing stairs in this next release, it'd be nice to know that so that you don't spend too much time trying to work around that and do something different on stairs. We tend to be pretty agile. So what we're working on is pretty fluid. Some of the things coming for the next release include things like being able to put in translucent panels. So you can say, I've got this panel, it's translucent, and when you look at it in the 3D model, it's going to look translucent. Being able to put in eave lights on a building without having to go in and say, all right, I want eave lights on here, so I have to go in and do it. It has upper sheathing, and the upper sheathing height is, well, what's the wall height? The wall height is 12 foot, so I want 2 foot of upper sheathing, so I'm going to set the upper sheathing height at 10 foot. No, you'll be able to just say, I want wall height I want eave lights on the eave walls of this building, and it's going to be a 2-foot high strip of this other material, which happens to be a translucent panel. And you'll also be able to say, and oh, by the way, that's 1.5 foot down from the top of the wall. So we are going to be working on that. We're going to be working on, what else is coming up in the next release?
I mean, we'll be doing something similar for the roofs with the clear panels.
Yes, similar for roofs for clear panels. And like I said, just being able to show a clear panel or a translucent panel that looks like a clear or translucent panel. So you'll be able to control the opacity of the materials that are on your sheathing. And then let's see, we had we're going to be working on an enhancement to allow you to set up. Right now, you can go to on your job. You can have a loading input, and you can allow the user to pick either this loading or this loading or this loading. What we're going to be doing is allowing you to, if you choose to spend the time and effort to set up a admittedly pretty big table, you'll be able to set up a table that says, if the zip code is this or this or this, use this loading. If the zip code is this or this or this, use this other loading. And so instead of a user having to know that, oh, over in my neighborhood, we use 50, 10, 0, and 12, they just have to know what their zip code is. And that will be able to get the correct loading selected so that it picks the right trusses, so that it picks uses the right span tables when it's looking up the materials to use for posts and girts and things like that. So people who make use of that will find that extremely valuable. A lot of you will kind of go, oh, well, thanks, but it doesn't help me any. And that is unfortunately the nature of some of these enhancements, where you're just like, the stuff we did for making it better for children, it isn't going to help anybody that doesn't have child builders, but we do have lots of different builders, and so we try and get a good balance of things in each release that are going to help most of our users. We don't ever want to release a version where most of our users look at it and go, well, that's great, but it didn't do anything to help me. Not our goal at all. But at the same time, we can't have every release be things that Royden wants.
Some things. Yeah, I mean, in terms of a list of what's coming and when, that just gets difficult. We could do something like that. I mean, we can set our high priorities, and we basically plan 1 or 2 releases into the future, and the rest of it gets pretty murky just because we have so many things that come up that we need to do. But yeah, I don't know, we could kind of brainstorm on some way to at least have a sense of these are the things that we know we want to work on, and here's kind of a fuzzy time frame of when this could happen, subject to change.
Yeah. So some of the things they're asking about, can we have the program clad the posts on the open lean-tos and porches? That is on the list. It is not coming in the next release, but it could be coming soon. And sort of related to it is when you have a truss carrier at the top of there, being able to clad that porch beam as well. So those are all kind of related.
Yeah, definitely more work on the porches.
Yep, more work on the porches.
Mm-hmm.
will the ability to add multiple catalog items at one time be a part of this release? Not sure.
So you can do that now in a few different ways, right? Like with the up low.
Yeah. Well, I'm not sure what exactly John is asking for there, so maybe he can clarify that. Aaron says, well, we have the ability in the future to have floors cut into the exterior walls like a house is framed, with 4-foot exterior studs on the first floor and the second floor exterior walls built on top of the floor. Aaron, that is what's called platform framing, and that is not how a house is framed if you're doing post frame. And this is a post frame building, but it is on the list.
Yep, that's another one.
Stud frame. Yeah,
it's a high priority, but it's a high effort one.
Yeah. Yeah, because we've even seen some examples of, well, I want post frame to go up to 10 feet, and then at 10 feet I want a platform to be built there on top of those posts, and then I'm going to put stud frame walls on top of that are going to hold up the roof. So it quickly and evilly gathers roofs. What we focused on initially for barn dominiums really was the idea that no, it's a post frame building that has stud frame walls inside, and that gives you the advantages of post frame building, which is a large open area inside, and big open expanses that you can finish to your heart's content. But platform framing is definitely something that is on the list.
Mm-hmm.
And so let's see, any more talk on setting a reduction addition on certain steel trims or controlling gable shed roof steel lengths separately? I'm not sure what's being asked for there either. So
I'm not sure I do either.
Reduction addition on certain steel trims.
So it's maybe like editing of the material list, potentially.
I don't know. I mean, I think if I was to guess, which always gets us into trouble, right? Let's see if Brandon has talked about it. If I was to guess on that one, I think this goes back to something that I mentioned a while back, which is the idea that when you have a gable roof, for instance, your steel is going to run from a half an inch short of the edge of the overhang all the way up to 2 inches short of the ridge, because you're going to leave a gap in there so that you can put a vented ridge cap on there, and the ceiling will, you'll get the right lengths of your sheathing. Versus if you're running a shed roof, you want it to run all the way out, and half an inch short of the end on the low end and a half an inch short of the end on the high end. And I think what's it's asking for there is basically the ability to just say, look, I want the trim to affect the length of the sheathing. So if I'm using this trim, if I'm using a ridge cap, for instance, then I'm going to hold it back. If I'm using this other trim, I'm not going to hold it back. Something along those lines.
Mm-hmm.
Gable roof steel typically will be brought down from the peak to allow for ventilation, but monoslope roofs, we do not want the reduction, so all of the lean-to roofs need to have them added. Okay, so that is what he was talking about. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and we gave people a roof trim margin so that they could calculate or so they can adjust the length of the steel to account for the fact that when you have a ridge cap, you're going to leave a gap. But it really shouldn't be a margin that you put in on the roof. It should be a
depending on the connection type, sort of.
yeah, it'd be a sheathing adjustment that would be part of the trim material, because you could potentially have a non-vented gable, right, where you don't hold the sheathing back, so there you'd have an offset of 0, or eave, ridge cap, non-vented ridge cap. But if I use a vented ridge cap, if I use this vented ridge cap, I need it to be held back 2 inches. If I use this other vented ridge cap, I need it held back 4 inches. And so I think the way to address that issue is to be able to have the trim, particularly the roof trim, but also the wall trim and everything else, have some dimensions in it that say, oh, by the way, when sheathing is running up against this piece of trim, it's adjusted like this, because they are kind of hand in hand. Same thing happens at like corners. Inside corners or outside corners, you're going to hold the corner, the sheathing back at the corner.
Mm-hmm. So would that work with a gable?
The corner lap would go.
That work with a gable versus a mono roof?
It would, because on a gable you're going to have a ridge cap at the top. On a mono you're going to have a high
wall,
eave.
like the wall.
You're going to have a high eave. Yeah, the high eave trim, which is a different trim. So yes, that trim would then allow you to control it separately.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that.
Okay. I believe that is captured. So
yeah, we can bump that up the list.
Yep.
Do we have to rewrite the whole program, Mark, to make that happen, or can you do that?
No,
Let me get off the call here.
I probably won't
somewhere in between
all here, but yeah.
It's doable.
No, it's not. It's doable. Yeah, it's.
Okay.
The devil's in the details, right?
Yep.
And so that's where things go. Things get a little hairy. But John wanted to clarify on his question about adding multiple items. So basically, if you cancel this and go to job review, and go ahead and add catalog. Add something, sure. Call it just usage test.
Usage test. Trim.
Yeah. Sure. Just save it. Go ahead and save that.
Okay.
Now go ahead and add another one. Oh wait, you can't. Even though the wait timer is set, add catalog does not wait. That should get fixed.
Mm-hmm.
So you call it, change that to test 2.
Okay. So the idea is that you could kind of save this or add it, and then you could put in another one and add it, and then another one and add it, and then you could be all done potentially. Or maybe
you could put them in and add them, and it would just add them there, and it wouldn't update your total price until you hit the refresh button. But
Mm-hmm. So this could maybe create kind of a list of things that you're adding here.
no, you would just add it, and it would add it to the list just like it does. It just wouldn't refresh. It wouldn't go up to the server and refresh.
So you hit save, and then you just can immediately come back and hit add catalog, and you put in another one, and then add catalog.
Yeah, just like with that slider pulled over. If you go over to building size, you can change the width and the height, and the ceiling height and the slope, and as long as you're changing stuff, it's not gonna. It'll let you change a bunch of things, and it won't do them until either 27 seconds have passed or you hit the refresh button. So I think if we did that, John, would that address your use case?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, the only other thing in a perfect world would be like if almost like you could add, like if you have that catalog window open and you could add several different things all at the same time there as well, instead of having to click add each time. I mean, obviously speeding it up, like you just said, would be a lot better than what it is now, but yeah, either way, but what I was thinking.
Okay. The other thing that we talked about, if you go ahead and hit add catalog, Sean, would be just another button here that says save and add another.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Yep. And these are the kind of things that we would talk about as we start to design this.
Yeah.
I could see it being nice to see a list of things that you've kind of...
Yeah, but then you'd want to, if you added all three of those things, would you want to be able to go back and look at all three of those things again? Or would you just have those three things listed over there? If you want to add things,
yeah. So
would you want to be able to just select one entry and delete them all because you added them all at once? What if you add three things and then you get ready to add the fourth thing and you go, oh wait, I wanted six of that other one. Can you then select that here and edit it? In which case we're just duplicating functionality that already exists without a whole lot of benefit. But I think if you just save and add another, if you just added it down there, and if you wanted to change it, you could go back and change it. But I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you're still limited to the fact that this button only lets you add stuff to the trim category, which is the trim category you're in. If you wanted to add some trim and some fasteners that were going to be under accessories and some lumber that was going to go under framing, you would have to go to close this and go to each of those tabs and add them anyway. So. Yeah, so Jason says, in my opinion, less clicks is always the answer. And that's true. So I think we can get less clicks by just saying, look, save, and if we have another button that's save and add another. And when you do that, it saves and clicks the add button for you. Saves you a click. Would it be possible to add a don't combine ceilings option similar to the don't combine walls option so you can run different ceiling liner on the same height additional buildings? No. Potentially, but I think that there's probably a better way to address the problem that you're trying to solve here, and I think that is with what we're calling rooms. And so being able to to go into the model. If you go ahead and turn the roof off, Sean. And spin this around. What we have here really is two rooms, right? There's the main room, and then there's this cantilevered area over here. Oh, three rooms, and then there's the porch. Those are, conceptually, those are three rooms. And if you could click on that room and say, this one has this for ceiling, this one over here has this for ceiling, and this one doesn't have any ceiling. And similarly, this one has drywall. This one over here doesn't have drywall. Even to the point of being able to sort of define a divider that divides between two rooms in the absence of a wall. And then you could do things like, well, this room, which goes up to this divider wall, has ceiling, and this room over here doesn't, even without a wall to divide them up. But I think that that's probably going to address that particular use case, Casey. Steel liner in a shop and drywall in the living quarters.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's
it's another one of those.
Yeah, we don't really address that right now.
Mm-hmm. Definitely a priority, but
yeah,
another...
and really ceiling. Ceiling is, it's separate from the things that make up the roof, if you will. So, your attached buildings, things like that, the ceiling is a very different concept from that, and really should be addressed like the wall liner on a room by room basis.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
And so, yeah, so I mean, we have a similar problem to the ceiling liner with the idea that, oh, well, in this part of the building I want a flat ceiling, but then over here I want scissors. Or in this part of the building I want regular trusses, and then over here it's attic trusses. And then over here it's scissor trusses, and being able to do those different things across within a building are important, particularly when we start getting into more barn door type stuff. That happens more and more. But yeah, right now, unfortunately, Casey, the best way to handle that is to just use a different ceiling height. For that additional building. But really, that works if you have a scenario like half of this is shop and the other half is living quarters, and it's divided right down the middle. But what's often more common is that this L-shaped area on the left is shop, and the L-shaped area on the right is the living quarters. And being able to say don't combine ceilings wouldn't really help very much in that case. What you really want is the ability to say, look, I've got this big open building, and I've got these walls that kind of form a little Z down the middle of it, and everything to the left of that Z is shop, and everything to the right of that is living quarters. I think that's going to be a lot more power and a lot more flexibility and a lot more intuitive usage as well, I think, if we do our job right. So, all right.
Is that it?
That is it so far. So yeah, unless anybody has anything else, I'm going to move we adjourn so I can go work on those. What was I supposed to work on?
Lots of things.
Lots of things, designing those things. Now, it does sound like it might be helpful to a lot of people if we had some place where we said, look, here's some things we're thinking about, and these are things we're definitely going to do in the next release. Here's some other things that we could do on the next release. Do we have a vote option where people can say, hey, yeah, I really want that feature.
Mm-hmm.
And vote for features.
Yeah, that's a good thing to work on.
And that way we have two things. We get people an opportunity to vote on things, but we also give people a little bit more visibility of what's coming down the pike.
Yeah, I can take that one.
All righty. Well, unless anybody else has anything else, I'm going to move we adjourn.
Sounds good to me. Thanks, everybody.
Everyone.
Joining. We'll keep
Thank you,
you
everyone.
up to date on when we release this. See you next time.
Bye, guys.